Welcome, dearest listener. Step into Ravenswood Abbey's snowbound halls with me. I'm your guide through the holly and the horror, every clue crisp as icicles, every revelation sharp as the fatal blade. If you've ever suspected that the merriest nights hide the darkest deeds, this is your tale. Subscribe now and never miss a chime of the midnight clock. New chapters arrive weekly, wrapped in mystery. Yours in suspense, the chronicler of crimson secrets. Snow seals the gates, the Yule log crackles, and a shipping magnate bleeds out on Christmas Eve, stabbed by his own ice pick while carols drift through the dark. Hercule Poirot, trapped by the blizzard, must unmask a killer before the abbey becomes a tomb. Welcome to Hercule Poirot and the Christmas Eve Enigma. 5 chapters of frost, fraud, and festive murder. Hit play. The clock is ticking toward midnight. Chapter 1. The Yule log's crimson secret. The snow began at vespers, soft as communion wafers, then thickened into a white fury that erased the Yorkshire wolds. By 9 o'clock, Ravenswood Abbey stood alone in a world of alabaster and silence, its Jacobean gables crowned with drifts, its gargoyles blindfolded by frost. Inside, the great hall blazed with defiance. A Yule log the girth of a siege cannon roared in the cavernous hearth, scattering sparks that hissed against flagstones older than the Reformation. Holly and ivy garlanded the hammer beams. Mistletoe hung like pale conspirators from the chandeliers. Hercule Poirot, detained by the storm en route to London, had accepted the squire's invitation with the resigned courtesy of a man who preferred order to chaos. He stood now near the minstrel's gallery, a diminutive figure in patent leather shoes and astrakhan coat, his egg-shaped head tilted as he observed the company. His green eyes, bright as holly berries, missed nothing. At the hall's heart strode Giles Haverford, shipping magnate and lord of this frozen manor. 47, built like a Viking, his silvered mane swept back, his scarlet waistcoat straining across a chest that had once bullied dockyard stevedores. Tonight his laughter boomed, but Poirot noted the tremor in the hand that raised the mulled wine goblet. Fear, perhaps, or the onset of palsy. To absent friends, Giles toasted, voice rolling like thunder over the moors, and to secrets that die with the old year. The 12 guests raised their glasses. Poirot sipped, nostrils flaring at the clove and cinnamon, and catalogued the faces. Mrs. Lavinia Haverford, 42, glided at her husband's side in emerald velvet that shimmered like black ice. Her raven hair was coiled beneath a diamond bandeau. Her winter sea eyes held the chill of a woman who had learned to smile while counting costs. Captain Rupert, Rusty Blaine, 38, leaned against the mantel, regimental tie askew, ruddy cheeks glowing from the fire. Or whiskey. His limp souvenir of Gallipoli did not slow the restless energy in his boxer's shoulders. Miss Daphne Haverford, 19, Giles' ward, perched on a settle like a porcelain shepherdess, golden curls escaping her ribbon, hands clasped so tightly the knuckles blanched. Dr. Felix Carstairs, 55, hovered near the punch bowl, spectacles fogged, beard streaked with grey. His fingers worried a small vial in his waistcoat pocket. Laudanum, Poirot surmised. Miss Iris Penrose, 28, Giles' secretary, stood apart, Titian hair pinned severely, shorthand notebook clutched like a hymnal. Her gaze, sharp as a scalpel, followed every gesture. At 11:15, the village clock tower, half a mile distant, chimed through the storm, muffled but insistent. The abbey's own generator hummed, feeding the chandeliers with steady gold. Giles clapped for attention. A recitation, he bellowed. My wife, the incomparable Lavinia, shall favour us with Lady Macbeth's sleepwalking scene, most apt for Christmas Eve, eh? Laughter rippled, uneasy. Lavinia's smile froze, but she ascended the dais beneath the minstrel's gallery, emerald skirts pooling like spilled wine. The firelight painted her face in tragic planes. Out, damned spot! Her voice, trained in West End theatres, filled the hall, each syllable a dagger. The guests were spellbound. Even the footman paused mid-service. At 11:27, Poirot noted the exact second on his pocket watch. The chandeliers flickered, once, twice. Then darkness swallowed the hall, absolute as the tomb. A collective gasp, the scrape of chairs, a woman's stifled cry. 30 seconds later, the lights flared back. Giles Haverford stood before the Yule log transfixed, one hand pressed to his chest. A crimson stain bloomed across the scarlet waistcoat, spreading with obscene speed. His goblet slipped, shattering on the flagstones. He toppled forward, face kissing the flames, the scent of singed hair mingling with pine. Lavinia screamed, a sound torn from the diaphragm of a tragedian. She flew down the dais, velvet trailing like a funeral pall. Rusty vaulted the settle, boots skidding on wine. Giles, Daphne shrank back, hands over her mouth, eyes wide as saucers. Dr. Carstairs pushed through, kneeling in the sparks. His fingers probed the wound, came away slick. Dead, he pronounced, voice cracking. Instantaneous. Iris stood frozen, notebook open, pencil poised as though taking dictation from death itself. Poirot moved with the precision of a dancer. He reached the body first, gloved hand staying Lavinia's collapse. The wound was small, neat, beneath the sternum, angled upward. No weapon in sight. The mulled wine ice pick, ornamental silver, with a mother-of-pearl handle, had vanished from its stand beside the punch bowl. He scanned the floor. A single holly leaf, serrated edge flecked with blood, lay caught in Giles's cuff. Near the library window, its latch ajar despite the storm. A scrap of emerald velvet fluttered, snagged on the iron hasp. Outside, the snow had ceased. The world lay hushed. Footprints, narrow, heeled, marched toward the window across the fresh drift, then stopped. No return trail. Rusty noticed Poirot's gaze. Generators in the cellar. Must have tripped. Carstairs shook his head. The wound, surgical. The pick was driven with force, then withdrawn. Lavinia clutched Poirot's arm, nails digging through wool. The gates are blocked. The telephone lines, down. We're trapped. Poirot disengaged gently, eyes never leaving the footprints. Trapped, madame, or protected. The snow preserves evidence as faithfully as it imprisons. He turned to the assembly, voice cutting through the sobs. Mesdames et messieurs, the little grey cells awaken, a murder most festive and most meticulous. We shall begin with the holly leaf and end with the hand that plucked it. The Yule log crackled, spitting a spark that landed on Giles' sleeve and smouldered. Poirot extinguished it with a gloved finger, then straightened, moustaches bristling. Inspector Japp will arrive when the road's clear. Until then, Hercule Poirot is in charge. No one leaves this hall. Outside, the wind moaned through the gargoyles, and the Abbey's windows, frost-laced, stared like blind eyes into the white night. The Enigma had begun, and the clock, Poirot noted, was already ticking toward midnight. Chapter 2. Footprints in the Holly. Dawn arrived like a reluctant confession, pale and thin-lipped, creeping over the snow-buried wolds to find Ravenswood Abbey locked in crystalline silence. The storm had spent itself. The sky hung low and pewter, the air sharp enough to cut the lungs. Hercule Poirot stood on the terrace, breath blooming in delicate spirals, his galoshes leaving perfect half-moons in the virgin drift. The footprints from the library window, narrow, heeled, size 8, marched in a straight, deliberate line toward the glass, then vanished as though the walker had been spirited away by Yuletide magic. Poirot knelt, tweezers poised. The prints were crisp, the heel marks deep where weight had shifted forward. He scraped a sample of snow into a small tin, then followed the trail backward. At the window itself, the emerald velvet scrap fluttered like a pennant of gilt. He freed it with care. The weave was fine, the tear fresh, thread still holding the warmth of a human hand. Inside, the great hall had become a mausoleum. Giles Haverford's body lay beneath a velvet pall near the hearth, the Yule log now a heap of glowing coals that painted the gargoyles in hellish crimson. The mulled wine goblets had been cleared, but the scent of cloves lingered like a ghost. Poirot summoned the household to the morning room, a chamber panelled in dark oak, its windows filmed with frost flowers. A fire crackled. The suspects entered one by one, each bearing the weight of a sleepless night. Mrs. Lavinia Haverford arrived first, wrapped in a sable coat despite the warmth, her raven hair unbound and streaming like a morning banner. Her eyes, red-rimmed, held the brittle glitter of unshed tears or calculation. She sank into a wing chair, fingers clutching a lace handkerchief as though it were a lifeline. Captain Rusty Blaine followed, boots leaving wet prints on the turkey rug. His regimental tie was askew, his cheeks flushed with more than cold. He poured coffee with a sailor's unsteadiness, sloshing it over the saucer. Miss Daphne Haverford slipped in like a wraith, golden curls tangled, a shawl clutched about her shoulders. She perched on the edge of a settle, hands twisting the fringe until thread snapped. Dr. Felix Carstairs entered with the hesitancy of a man walking to the scaffold. His spectacles were fogged. He polished them on a sleeve already stained with Giles's blood. The vial in his pocket clinked softly as he sat. Miss Iris Penrose was last, notebook tucked beneath her arm, Titian hair pinned with mechanical precision. Her gaze swept the room, cataloguing reactions with the cool efficiency of a court stenographer. Poirot stood before the fire, hands clasped behind his back. Mesdames et messieurs, the snow has preserved our tableau. Let us examine it. He produced the holly leaf, now sealed in glassine. Found in Monsieur Haverford's cuff, the serrations are unique, cut by a blade, not torn. Lavinia's breath hitched. The wreaths, every door has one. Precisely, Poirot said. But this leaf came from the wreath above the servants' passage, beside the library. Someone brushed past in haste. He laid the emerald scrap on the table. Lavinia's hand flew to her throat. My gown. Torn deliberately, Poirot interrupted. The threads are stretched, not snapped. A distraction, perhaps. Rusty slammed his cup down. I was in the cellar, fixing the generator. The footman saw me. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The generator log shows power restored at 11:29, yet the lights returned at 11:27. 2 minutes unaccounted for, enough to kill, to exit, to return. Daphne's voice was a thread. I was reading by candle in the nursery, alone. Yet your candle was found extinguished on the windowsill, Poirot said. Wax pooled on the outside ledge. You watched, ma petite, or someone used your room. Carstairs' hands trembled. I was in my chamber, headache powders, the laudanum. Half empty, Poirot finished, though you filled it yesterday. Curious. Iris opened her notebook. Mr. Haverford dismissed me at 11:20. I heard him arguing. With whom? Poirot pounced. A man's voice, muffled, something about £40,000. Rusty paled beneath his tan. Poirot produced the regimental tie-pin from his pocket, its enamel chipped. Found beside the body, engraved R.B. Gallipoli. Yet you claim you were in the cellar. Planted, Rusty roared. I lost it weeks ago. Poirot turned to the window. The footprints ended at a patch of gravel, now swept smooth. Someone walked backward, using a broom from the scullery, but the gravel retains memory. He pressed his cane. It sank an inch. The weight was heavier on the return. Carrying the ice pick, perhaps. He led them to the library. The window latch was smeared with grease, tallow from the kitchen. On the sill, a faint smudge of mulled wine. The killer entered here, struck in the dark, exited via the servants' passage. But why the footprints? Lavinia whispered. To frame me, the velvet, or to confuse, Poirot said. The ice pick was wiped clean, then planted in the snow beneath the window, but the snow preserves heat. The metal was still warm when the constable found it. Daphne began to cry. Iris closed her notebook with a snap. Carstairs stared into the fire as though seeing ghosts. Rusty paced, boots thudding. Poirot's voice cut through the tension. The holly leaf, the velvet, the tie-pin, the footprints, all pieces of a puzzle. But the center is missing. Who benefits if Monsieur Haverford dies tonight? He produced a folded document from his waistcoat. Giles' will, retrieved from the study safe. Rewritten 3 days ago. The beneficiary is not among the obvious heirs. The room froze. Outside, a raven landed on the windowsill, cawing once before taking flight. Poirot watched it go, then turned back to the suspects. The grey cells work best in silence. We shall reconvene at tea. Until then, no one leaves the Abbey. The snow keeps its secrets, but not forever. As the others filed out, Poirot lingered by the hearth. He lifted the holly leaf to the light, its blood-flecked edge catching the fire's glow. Somewhere in the Abbey, a clock struck 9. Slow, deliberate, as though time itself were counting down to the next revelation. Chapter 3. The Poisoned Wassail. The afternoon light slanted through the stained glass windows of the long gallery, fracturing into shards of ruby and sapphire across the parquet floor. Outside, the snow had begun again, fat, lazy flakes drifting like ash from a dying fire. Hercule Poirot moved along the gallery with the measured tread of a museum curator, his cane tapping a soft counterpoint to the Abbey's creaking timbers. In his pocket, the holly leaf rested beside the emerald scrap. In his mind, the footprints marched and retraced themselves in endless permutation. He paused before a portrait of Giles Haverford's grandfather, a stern admiral in full dress, eyes like gimlets. Poirot tilted his head. You built an empire on salt and steel, mon amiral. Your grandson preferred ledgers and lies. A footman approached, silver tray trembling. Tea is served in the winter parlour, monsieur. Poirot followed the scent of Darjeeling and cinnamon. The winter parlour was a confection of gilt and brocade, its fireplace carved with cherubs now blackened by centuries of soot. The suspects had assembled around a low table laden with scones, clotted cream, and a silver samovar that hissed like a serpent. The atmosphere was brittle. Conversation had died with the first cup. Poirot took the chair nearest the fire, warming his hands as though the chill were in his bones rather than the air. We shall speak of legacies, he announced. Monsieur Haverford's will, rewritten 3 days ago, names a beneficiary not of his blood. Who stands to gain? Lavinia Haverford set her cup down with a clink. Giles mentioned a charity, Orphans of Merchant Seamen. A noble gesture, Poirot said. Yet the codicil is witnessed by Miss Penrose alone, and the seal broken this morning. Iris Penrose's fingers tightened on her notebook. He dictated it in haste. I transcribed verbatim. Poirot produced the document, unfolding it with reverence. To my faithful secretary, Iris Penrose, I bequeath the sum of £50,000 and the villa at San Remo. Curious, the orphans receive the residue, after debts. Rusty Blaine choked on his scone. 50,000. The man was bankrupt. Precisely, Poirot said. The shipping line bleeds money, yet Miss Penrose was promised a fortune. Motive, n'est-ce pas? Iris's voice was steel. He promised marriage first, then reneged. The money was compensation. Daphne Haverford's cup rattled in its saucer. He laughed at me this morning, said I'd be sent to a convent if I didn't behave. The will was his revenge. Dr. Carstairs cleared his throat. Giles consulted me last week, feared ruin, asked about institutionalization. His gaze flicked to Lavinia. For his wife. Lavinia rose, sable coat slipping from her shoulders. He wanted me certified mad to secure a divorce. I found the letters. Letters? Poirot pounced. She produced a bundle tied with ribbon. Giles' hand, unmistakable. To a woman in Harrogate, a typist, 22. Poirot scanned them. Perfumed notepaper, declarations of passion, promises of escape. And you kept them why, madame? Leverage, she said simply. But I did not kill him. The samovar hissed louder. Poirot lifted the lid. Steam curled like incense. Beneath the tea cosy, a small vial rolled free. Laudanum, half empty, label in Carstairs' spidery script. The doctor blanched. I filled it yesterday, full. Yet you dosed yourself at dawn, Poirot said. The level is lower by precisely 30 drops, enough to fell a horse or a man. Carstairs' hands shook. I swear. Poirot turned to the hearth. A heap of ash caught his eye. Paper burned hastily. He teased out a fragment with tongs. 40,000. Repayment by. The rest consumed. Captain Blaine, he said softly. Your embezzlement. Monsieur Haverford discovered it at 11:29. You argued in the study. Miss Penrose heard. Rusty's face purpled. He threatened the police. I begged. Begged for time, Poirot finished. Or for silence. A crash shattered the tension. The chandelier above the table swayed violently, crystals chiming like alarm bells. A chain snapped. The fixture plummeted. Rusty shoved Daphne aside. The chandelier struck the table, splintering mahogany, scattering porcelain like shrapnel. Silence. Then Lavinia's scream. Poirot was already at the wreckage, examining the broken chain. Sawn 3/4 through, done with a hacksaw from the gardener's shed. He looked up. A warning. Someone fears the truth. Iris knelt, retrieving her notebook. Page 47 torn out. The will's codicil. It was here, she whispered. Someone took it. Poirot led them to the servants' passage. The holly wreath above the door was askew. A sprig lay on the floor, berries crushed, staining the stone like blood. He lifted it. From the same bush as the leaf in Monsieur Haverford's cuff, the killer passed twice. In the passage, a narrow stair descended to the wine cellar. Poirot's flashlight revealed scuff marks, heel drags, deliberate. The ice pick was carried here, then planted outside. But why? Carstairs' voice echoed. The generator switch is here. Someone could cut the lights from below. Poirot's beam caught a glint, a woman's heel print in spilled mulled wine leading up the stairs. Lavinia wears flats, Daphne slippers, Iris court shoes, Iris supplied. But I was in the study. Poirot ascended. The print ended at a door to the nursery. Inside, Daphne's candle stub sat on the sill. Wax pooled outward. She watched the terrace, or someone used her vantage. Back in the parlour, Poirot faced them. The laudanum, the letters, the will, the chandelier, all threads in a tapestry of desperation. But the pattern emerges. Tomorrow, we reconstruct the crime. Tonight, the Abbey sleeps, under guard. As they dispersed, Poirot lingered by the fire. He lifted the crushed holly sprig, inhaling its sharp scent. Somewhere, a clock chimed 3, slow, deliberate. The wassail had been poisoned, but not with laudanum. The true toxin was fear, and it was spreading. Chapter 4. The phantom carol dusk-draped Ravenswood Abbey in a shroud of indigo, the snow-laden wolds glowing faintly under a rising moon. The village carolers, 6 sturdy souls in mufflers and mittens, trudged up the drive at 5 o'clock, lanterns swinging like golden pendulums. Their voices rose through the stillness, once in royal David's city. Pure and piercing, a counterpoint to the Abbey's brooding silence. Hercule Poirot watched from the terrace, breath fogging the air, his astrakhan coat buttoned to the chin. The carolers' arrival was fortuitous. Their innocent eyes would bear witness to the reconstruction he now orchestrated. Inside, the great hall had been cleared. The Yule log's embers were raked smooth, the mulled wine table restored with a fresh ice pick, identical to the murder weapon, its mother-of-pearl handle gleaming. Poirot positioned the suspects with the precision of a chess master. "Captain Blaine," he directed, "you will stand at the generator switch in the cellar." Rusty's jaw tightened, but he descended the servant's stair without protest. "Mrs. Haverford, the wassail bowl. Miss Haverford, the settle with your book. Dr. Carstairs, your chamber door. Miss Penrose, the study desk." Each took their place, the hall's shadows lengthening as the carolers' voices drifted closer. Poirot addressed the footmen, now deputized as guards. "At 11:27 precisely, extinguish the lights. 30 seconds of darkness, then restore." He took his own position near the hearth, pocket watch open. The carolers reached the terrace doors, faces rosy, breath steaming. A footman admitted them. They clustered near the Christmas tree, eyes wide at the opulence and the pall-covered form outlined beneath velvet. "Begin," Poirot commanded. The hall clock struck 11:15. Lavinia ladled wassail, steam curling like incense. Daphne opened a Christmas carol, candle flickering. Iris poised her pencil. Carstairs stood in his doorway, vial in hand. Rusty's boots echoed below. 11:20, Iris rose, miming dismissal, and crossed to the study. The carolers began, "God rest ye merry gentlemen," voices swelling. 11:25, Poirot noted the exact second Rusty's shadow passed the cellar grate, visible through a vent. The generator hummed steadily. 11:27, the lights died. Darkness, absolute, velvet, suffocating. The carolers' song faltered. A chair scraped, a gasp, Lavinia's. 30 seconds stretched like hours. Poirot counted silently, cane gripped tight. Light flared. Giles stand-in, a footman in scarlet waistcoat, stood before the hearth, hand clutched to chest. The ice pick was gone from the bowl. "Now," Poirot shouted. Rusty burst from the cellar, face slick with sweat. "I never touched the switch." The carolers stared, transfixed. Daphne's candle had guttered out. Wax pooled inward this time, not outward. Iris's notebook lay open. Page 47 restored. The codicil intact. Poirot strode to the servants' passage. The holly wreath above the door now bore a second clue. Fibers of scarlet wool caught in the prickles, matching Rusty's regimental scarf. He lifted them with tweezers. "Captain," he said, "you passed here twice, once to kill, once to return." Rusty's laugh was hollow. "Prove it." Poirot led them to the terrace. The footprints had been preserved under a tarp. He lifted it. Beneath, a second set. Backward, overlaid the first. Broom marks clear. You walked in reverse, sweeping as you went, but the weight distribution betrays you. The return was heavier, carrying the ice pick. Carstairs stepped forward, voice trembling. He forced me at gunpoint, said he'd expose my weakness. I wiped the blade, planted the type in. Iris's eyes blazed, and I forged the codicil. Giles dictated it drunk, then tore it up. I kept the pieces. Lavinia's voice cut like frost. You all profited from his death, but who struck the blow? Poirot ascended the dais, the carolers parting like the Red Sea. The reconstruction reveals the lie. The lights failed at 11:27, restored at 11:27:30, yet the generator log shows a manual override at 11:26, so 10 seconds early. Someone anticipated the darkness. He produced the ice pick from beneath the pool, hidden there by a footman. Returned to the scene after the murder to be discovered later, but the handle bears a fingerprint, in blood, not Giles's. Daphne's sob broke the silence. He was going to send me away. Hush, Poirot said gently. Your candle watched the terrace. Yes, but you saw nothing. The killer used the cellar grate, a direct line to the generator. Captain Blaine controlled the light. Rusty lunged for the terrace doors. A constable tackled him, the scarf unraveled, scarlet wool trailing like a bloodstain. Poirot knelt beside him. You embezzled 40,000. Giles confronted you at 11:20 in the study. You lured him here, stabbed him in the dark, exited via the servants' passage. Dr. Carstairs, blackmailed, cleaned the blade. Miss Penrose forged the will to secure her future. But the holly fibers, your scarf brushed the wreath as you fled. The carolers began to sing again, softer now. Silent night. Their lanterns cast golden pools on the snow. Poirot stood, silhouetted against the hearth. Tomorrow, at midnight, beneath the mistletoe, the final piece falls into place. The phantom carol has led us to the threshold of truth. As the singers departed, their lanterns bobbing into the night, Poirot lingered by the Christmas tree. He lifted a single silver bauble, watching the firelight fracture within. Somewhere, a clock chimed 6, each stroke a heartbeat in the Abbey's ancient chest. The Enigma tightened its noose, and the mistletoe waited. Chapter 5. The unmasking beneath the mistletoe midnight tolled from the Abbey's ancient clock. 12 slow, deliberate strokes that reverberated through the great hall like the heartbeat of a dying year. The Yule log had collapsed into a bed of crimson embers, casting an infernal glow across the flagstones. The Christmas tree stood sentinel, its silver baubles trembling in the draught from the terrace doors. Mistletoe hung heavy from the chandelier's new chains, replaced that afternoon, yet still swaying as though burdened by secrets. Hercule Poirot stood beneath it, a diminutive figure in impeccable evening dress, his moustaches waxed to lethal points. The suspects formed a semicircle, each face etched by firelight and fear. Lavinia Haverford clutched a rosary of jet beads. Rusty Blaine's wrists were cuffed, his regimental scarf confiscated. Daphne Haverford huddled beside Iris Penrose, whose notebook lay closed for the first time. Dr. Felix Carstairs stood apart, spectacles reflecting the flames like twin moons. Poirot's voice cut through the silence, silken and inexorable. Mesdames et messieurs, the grey cells have spoken. The enigma is solved. He began with the holly leaf, plucked from the servant's wreath at 11:26 before the lights failed. The cut is clean, made by a penknife. Captain Blaine's penknife, engraved with his initials, found in the cellar. Rusty's laugh was a bark. I carved the turkey with it yesterday. Precisely, Poirot said, but the blade bears a notch. New. It struck bone when you withdrew the ice pick. He produced the weapon, now wrapped in oilcloth. The fingerprint in blood. Yours, Doctor. You wiped it, but missed the handle's curve. Laudanum dulled your precision. Carstairs sank to a chair, head in hands. He threatened Lavinia. With exposure, Poirot finished. Your addiction. You cleaned the blade, planted the type in. But the true killer needed darkness and control. He turned to the generator log, projecting it onto a screen with a portable lantern. The override at 11:26:50, 10 seconds early. Captain Blaine, you cut the lights from the cellar grate, visible only from the nursery window. Miss Haverford's candle watched, but saw nothing, because you extinguished it first. Daphne's sob was a hiccup. He said he'd send me to a convent. A threat to ensure silence, Poirot said gently. But you tore page 47 from Miss Penrose's notebook, the codicil naming her beneficiary. You burned it in the nursery grate, but ash preserves ink. He produced the fragment. San Remo. Iris. Iris's face drained of color. He dictated it drunk, then tore it up. I kept the pieces for leverage. Lavinia's voice was ice. You all profited, but who struck the blow? Poirot ascended the dais, the carolers' lanterns now dark outside. The reconstruction revealed the lie. The ice pick was returned to the snow after the murder by Dr. Carstairs under duress, but the footprints, backward, swept, were a diversion. The true exit was the coal chute from the cellar to the stables. Captain Blaine emerged there, circled back through the front door at 11:30, feigning shock. He produced a coal smudge from Rusty's cuff. The chute's iron lid bears your boot print, size 10. The heel prints outside were Miss Penrose's court shoes, planted to frame Mrs. Haverford. Iris lunged for the terrace doors. A constable caught her wrist. He promised me everything, then laughed. Poirot's eyes blazed. You forged the codicil to secure your future, but the killer needed motive and opportunity. Captain Blaine embezzled 40,000. Giles confronted him at 11:20 in the study. You lured him here with a false message. Meet me by the Yule log, urgent. Written in Iris's hand, forged from her notebook. He produced the note, found in Giles' pocket. The ink matches her pen. You stabbed him in the dark, withdrew the pick, exited via the coal chute. Dr. Carstairs, blackmailed, cleaned the blade. Miss Penrose planted the footprints. Mrs. Haverford's velvet was torn by Daphne to protect her guardian's memory. Lavinia's rosary snapped, beads scattering like hail. You used my gown. To confuse, Poirot said, but the holly leaf was the key. It fell as Captain Blaine brushed the wreath, fleeing to the chute. The chandelier's sabotage, your work, Doctor, to silence Miss Penrose's confession. Rusty's defiance crumbled. The Empire was rotting. He'd have ruined us all. Constables moved forward. Cuffs clicked on Rusty's wrists. Carstairs surrendered without resistance. Iris wept silently, notebook falling open to a blank page. Daphne clung to Lavinia, who stood tall, sable coat, regal. Poirot raised a glass of untouched wassail. On Christmas Eve, greed wore the mask of loyalty, but the little grey cells are never asleep. Joyeux Noël, the enigma is solved, the masks removed, the abbey restored to peace. The clock struck 1, Christmas Day. Outside, the snow had ceased. The moon silvered the wolds. The carolers, long gone, had left a single lantern burning on the terrace. Poirot lifted it, its glow illuminating the mistletoe. He hung it beneath the boughs, a beacon for the new year. As the constables led the prisoners away, Lavinia approached. The villa in San Remo, will it be mine? Poirot smiled. The orphans will decide, madame, but the abbey endures. He stepped into the night, the lanterns swinging. The Yule log's last ember winked out. Somewhere, church bells began to peal, clear, triumphant, eternal. The Enigma was closed, the masks burned with the log, and Ravenswood Abbey slept at last.